Hello. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for today, August 22nd, 2023. As always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor in Chief, Avram Pelch. I'm joined by Associate Editor Les Pounder and our very special guest today, Mike Horne, a friend of the show, who is also has been known to do a lot of great projects and works on Raspberry Pi Jam. So, what what is new with you, Mike?
I've been working on a very mini Cyberdeck. So I saw something on Reddit a little while ago, and saw this really small flight case, and thought that would make a really good Cyberdeck. And then I realised quite how small it was. So here it is. Oh, it's frozen. Never mind. Okay, well
Frozen
that's
banana.
yep. That's as it is. Um, Inside,
Wow.
I want to try and show you what's actually inside it, if it'll actually work. Of course it won't. So what we'll do is we'll pick it up and show it to the camera. So that's it,
Nice, tiny.
almost complete. Inside we've got a keyboard which just about fits. And when you close the lid, you hope that it's not squeezing the screen too much. You've got a LiPo battery at the back. It's quite a beefy one. It's 3 cells. I think it's something like 2200 milliamp hours, possibly twice that. And I've got a DC power converter, which takes the sort of 12 volts in and then gives 5 volts out. So that's connected up to I've got to get the screen direction right here. There we go. To a Raspberry Pi 2W, which is towards the right-hand side of the screen. And on that, I've got an Enviro Plus, which is a board from Pimoroni, which has fortunately got a 5 volt and ground connection on it, which means that I can plug the power converter straight into it. And on that, I've also got a button, because it breaks out a lot of the GPIO pins just to the bottom. And then the Enviro Plus, the button controls an alternate display which shows you what the CPU usage, what the RAM usage is of the Pi. And then there's just about enough room for an extra SD card and the LiPo charging monitor. And at the top is a 5.5-inch screen, which fortunately is a touch screen, which means that I can connect up a folding Bluetooth keyboard.
Nice.
Which occasionally loses connection, which is why I'm going to switch to that one. That one's got.
I've used both of them. The little one's better to use. Is it 2.4 gigahertz dongle or is it Bluetooth? That one.
Yeah, it's a 2.4 gigahertz dongle. I did buy a Bluetooth one as well, but the MAC address keeps changing, which is not really helpful when you're trying to trust it.
Is it following a pattern when it changes, or is it just random?
Yeah, it just adds one to the last number.
Okay.
And then it runs out and goes backwards again. Well, I've had this one for ages, just hoping for a use of it. It does fit inside the case, but the case doesn't quite close with it in there. I was trying to figure out some way of mounting the screen without drilling the case, but I came up with a really good solution, which was drill the case.
Yeah. It works.
Yeah, so it's basically got really, really tiny standoffs behind the screen just to give everything else enough room for it to close. The ribbon cable you can see connects the mini HDMI from the Pi to the HDMI of the screen, but it's one of these sort of custom cables where you buy the ribbon cable and then you clip the appropriate ends onto it.
That's nice. I mean, a question I've got about the build is you've got the Enviro hat on there, the Enviro Plus hat, sorry.
Yep.
Is that literally just there for like voltage regulation and breaking at GPIO, or do you plan to use it for something else?
I'm planning on just monitoring the environment to start with, just to get a few temperature readings and humidity readings. I'm also using it to display the IP address,
Handy. Yeah.
which does come in handy when you want to program it, because programming on one of these little portable keyboards it's not fun.
No, it's not. No.
What I've also got in there is a spare SD card which has got Kali Linux on it.
Oh. Are you doing
I'm
any
hoping
war
it
driving with that?
I'm hoping at work they'll let me try and hack the network.
With their permission and a letter to say so.
Yes. Absolutely no denial of service attacks though on anybody's website ever.
Yeah. You can tell that I've read Freaky Clown's book, How to Rob a Bank.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Letter of authority. That's what you need.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the mini Cyberdeck project. I have the little power switch I've got that takes the LiPo to the power converter has got a fuse on it, so if it does feed back into the battery's not going to explode.
Oh, good idea. Good thinking. So are you exposing any ports to the outside of the case, or is it all internal?
It's all internal at the moment. The little button that I've got, which is over there, I might drill Dremel a hole in the side of the case so I can just press the side of it.
Nice.
But I'll probably have to re-solder the button just to get it all connected in and everything.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Awesome.
Yeah. So for folks who don't quite know what a Cyberdeck is, in case one of them is on watching, how would you describe what a Cyberdeck is and what the goal of a Cyberdeck is?
Cyberdecks are generally portable. They're basically portable workstations where you put everything into a flight case, add as many features as you like, but it's got to be portable-ish. Some Cyberdecks you need to plug them into the wall, but a lot of people try and get battery power in there. Brian Corteil, who you've had on before, did an excellent full-size one. It was about that big. Which is a bit of a work of art, to be honest. It's got buttons, it's got switches, it's lovely. This one, I don't think I can get I wanted to get a Perspex plate on top of it, but I don't think I've got enough room in there to put the Perspex plate on and put the keyboard on top.
That's a shame. That would set it off as like almost like a prop from a movie, pretty much. It looked like the nuclear football that the president carries.
Chris asked, do you still use those DVDs back there?
Occasionally. Occasionally, but I'm downloading a lot of them now because they're starting to degrade and it's not nice.
Oh, bit rot. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I've had a few discs go like that in the loft, unfortunately.
Yeah, I managed to get the wedding photography off there quickly.
Good man. Yeah, that's good. So, it's interesting. So I think what maybe some folks don't know is the idea of the Cyberdeck comes from William Gibson, doesn't it? It's a specific sci-fi reference.
Yeah, Neuromancer.
Which obviously is somewhat of a dated reference now because we expect our computers to be much smaller. You can do a lot of that with a phone or with a laptop. And the idea of the Cyberdeck kind of goes back to like when we had suitcase computers, like the Compaq or the Osborne or some of those back in the day. Which, by the way, I'm old enough to remember and have really, really wanted because I thought it was super cool. Like this idea you just have this suitcase and take it with you.
Commodore SX64 is what I wanted, which had a tiny, about 4 or 5 inch screen, and it was a proper CRT screen along with 1 or 2 5.25 drives inside it, and it was a luggable. It was huge, and it weighed a ton.
Nobody makes those anymore for some reason.
I think people are still using them a little bit for doing like radio where they put the big antennas up and they string the wire along and that kind of thing. They're still using them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you could lug it, I wonder what you could. I wonder what you could put in a suitcase. I wonder if people have. If I can imagine it right now, someone's probably done it, but I wonder if anyone's done it with a gaming PC. Yeah, so
it has been done. There was a couple of years ago we did a story. 'Cause I remember editing it, and it was like a big, almost gaming PC, like mainframe PC, supercomputer, and it had all these screens that popped out as well. It's just like a battle station on wheels. It's awesome.
yeah, it's so. I mean, it would be. So Chris asked, "Do you build that from Raspberry Pi?"
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's a 02W, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's a 02W in there, which I had to wait ages for it to actually get one.
Yeah.
So what was the reason for choosing that one? You could have just stuck a 0W in, really.
Or a 4. You could have done a 4.
There's definitely not enough room in there for a 4.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got about that much space left, which I'm going to put a USB hub in there so I can plug the dongle in. But I use the 2W just because it's got a little bit of extra grunt.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit. It's more like a Pi 3, but with not quite enough memory for what you really want. But
Yeah,
it will run a web browser, whereas the Pi 1.0 refuses to flat out run Chromium.
very true. Yeah.
In fact, I could probably go and make a cup of tea while it booted up. It was that slow when they allowed it. But yeah, the Pi 20W is it's actually got quite a lot of power for the size of it.
It's a nice little board. Yeah, the shame is the lack of RAM. I mean, 512 meg, it's okay, but as soon as you open the browser, goodbye RAM.
Yeah.
You're just completely gone. So 1 gig would have been lovely, but obviously you've got to hit a price point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's definitely an issue. So speaking of old tech, I was out a couple of weeks ago at an event near me where I actually didn't see any Raspberry Pis. So I'm veering a little bit here, but maybe folks will be interested. I was at a retro gaming festival here in New York, or expo here in New York, and the actual lack of emulation systems with Raspberry Pi, to me, I found interesting, which is that, like, when you're at the retro gaming festival expo, nobody wants to play emulation. Like, they want the original hardware. So, they want to show you, they want you to be able to play, and they had just a boatload of it, like, that you could play on, just a boatload of stuff that you could play on different, on different things. And it's just like amazing to me that, like, we could emulate all of these things on a Raspberry Pi for cheap and with free software, like RetroPie, but people don't want to do that. And I think there's probably good reason that they don't want to do that. So just for our, edification here, I'm going to show you guys some pictures I took. I took at the event, and tell me if you recognize. Oh, well, maybe some of these are giveaways since they have it in the picture, the name of the picture. But who played with this among our audience and guests? And
folks? Not for
folks?
me, but I'll check with Mike. But Mike, what's in television in the UK? Because I can't remember them.
I don't think we had them. I know we had Binatone, but with the with Pong.
Yeah.
I don't think we had in television.
So that's my son playing with some, I think, hand things.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Oh, Game and Watch. Oy.
Yeah.
So this, actually, I can't even tell. So recognize this? Anyone?
I need to make the screen bigger for that one.
Oh, I mean, it's a giveaway because it's in the picture. Playing Space Invaders.
Yeah.
Magnavox. I don't, and
Ah.
not the original Magnavox. This Magnavox. Oh, that was something else. So for some reason, I took a picture of this monitor because it looked really cool. So the original system is the Magnavox Odyssey, right? That was the only one that wasn't playable. It was behind glass that you couldn't actually play. But they had everything. Like here's a personal favorite, home Pong. The dials on the Pong are like I assume that they're potentiometers, are like the best potentiometer, the best like gaming dials I've ever seen. I really wish I could kind of recreate this at home. They also had.
You could a potentiometer, a pico, and then just set the range of potentiometer to 0 to whatever for the voltage range.
Yes, we could, but what we couldn't do is like have like this exact. I haven't seen like this exact dial.
No.
Right. And this, like, yes, you could take a potentiometer and easily do it, but just the quality or whatever, like the feel of the dials that they had was just perfect for this. Yeah, Chris, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't take a picture of it because they actually had one called Ultra Pong that was even better, where the controllers were like separate from the console, and had this really good feel. So.
Oh, ST.
Yeah, ST.
And the game on it is Escape from the Planet of the Robot Monsters.
What's this one? I honestly don't know the answer.
Don't know. It's on an Amiga. Space one could be Frontier Elite 2, but I don't know exactly.
Another picture of it. So here are a couple ones that were also like really old time things, I think, from Japan. So this was a Philips CD1, and this one here was a 64DD.
Yeah, the disc drive for Nintendo 64, unreleased in Japan, and it didn't do very well. They were planning to have a whole series of games released for it, and Zelda was going to be one of them that you downloaded to a cartridge and saved. And you could play new levels of Zelda, but it just never happened, unfortunately.
So here are some Tandy computers that they had. Close up on another Tandy. I assume you guys didn't have Radio Shack in UK?
No, we did have Tandy though, I think.
Yeah, Tandy was a UK version of Radio Shack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one. See, this is very Cyberdeck like, right? Except not in the suitcase.
TRS-80 model. Couldn't quite say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris, TRS-80, they are lovely machines. The Cocos are brilliant.
Model 44R, is that possible? Anyway.
They released loads of TRS-80s, all the way down to like Model 100s, which are the ones that journalists used to use to phone in their copy in the 80s. It had an acoustic coupler that attached to it. So you could go to a public phone and connect up with this modem and then send in your copy to the office.
Now this is weird. Somebody put a Commodore 64 disk drive next to a PC. This was my first computer. Not literally this one, but but I had this.
Always remember those joysticks being really, really bad for your wrists.
Yeah.
So this is an Atari joystick, of course, which I still like them. Like they were good for what they were for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking of joysticks, if I look over my shoulder, and this is where stuff falls off my shelf, that's a Commodore 64 joystick that I made about 2 years ago.
Oh, cool.
Literally, all it is inside is when you move the stick around, it just shorts out connections to ground, and you plug it into the connection on your C64, and away you go. But I've mapped 2 buttons to it. One is that's fire, so shooty. but that's also up because on Commodore 64 you only had one fire button. So to jump in Mario or something, or Gianna Sisters, you'd have to press up. But I mapped it to that as well.
So I'm curious about this, Les, actually. How did you? I made a thing like that a couple of years ago, and I had really big problems drilling the holes in the plastic. I had to get like a special rotary thing, and it created like hot plastic mess all over my house. How did you have a special way, or did you buy it with pre-drilled holes, or did you 3D print it? How did you make the buttonholes?
Drilled it myself. If I take off the batten here,
Yeah.
I'll actually show you one of the holes. There you go, and also I can show you a layer of dust. So there's a hole I drilled into it, and you can see it's pretty much just slightly bigger than the shaft that's there.
It looks really good, like a really solid. Like, what kind of tool did you use for that?
That was cut out with just a stepped drill bit. Nothing special. Just put a pilot hole in for the plastic, so a small drill bit, pilot hole, and then just use a stepped drill bit to go down to the correct width. And that was it. What I'm not going to show you are these two, because these two went wrong, and it's good that they went wrong because they've got covers over it so you can never see the crime.
Yeah, I have ones like that too, and I use the ones like that, which also they had the screw at the bottom. The pop-in buttons like fell through for me because they weren't the right size.
The pop-in ones are good, but the ones that have a threaded screw on the back are way better because they cover the crime of your botch job of drilling into it, and also they hold really well.
Yep. So I don't even know what this is. Wodoko Retro.
Ooh, no, don't know that one.
There's another Sega Mark III.
Yeah, Mark III.
Sega Master System. That's one I remember.
Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
Now here's one that I had never used that just really fascinated me: the MSX.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never seen this before. I guess it's a Japanese computer and game system.
Yeah, MSX was an opportunity to standardize computers across the world. So different companies said they were going to produce machines to meet a certain criteria. So MSX model, this, that, and the other. And you could get games to run on all of them because they were all the same machine, just made by different manufacturers. It didn't do very well. It didn't do very well at all in the UK. I saw one in the UK in my entire life. Right. That was at a retro event a few years ago. Yeah. Because we were dominated by Commodores and Ataris, that sort of thing.
Yep. All right. So Casio. I didn't even realize Casio had a gaming system. Did you?
Yeah.
I did. Oh, I did not. Supervision.
Oh,
looks a lot like in television, doesn't it? But Supervision. Never heard of it, right?
No, completely new to me, that.
Don't know what this one is. Hard to tell from zooming in. Another Casio.
Oh, Casio Loopy. Yeah. That was in the 1990s when everyone was making a games console.
Yeah. So here they actually had old PCs. Maybe not that exciting, except they were like playing 80s and 90s games. There's my son. I guess that's about all there is to say. But anyway, he played in a tournament where they played on GameCubes. Where
are they considered retro now?
Oh yeah. They played.
We're old.
They played GameCubes where they were playing. They were playing Mario Kart Double Dash. You actually had like two people to a car, one for the weapons and one for the driving. But I don't know. What struck me about this is that people really, I guess I'd say they don't like emulation, but there was nothing there, not of all the vendors, not of all the exhibits, where anybody had an emulator or Raspberry Pi running emulation to emulate anything. Yeah. And they could have, right? But they didn't. I guess that's considered uncool. And I get why it would be uncool in a way because first of all, you probably playing them on an old TV, the graphics just look different. Um, and then the controller, I mean, this could probably be easily replicated if you do it the right way, but the the controller is I think really shows the controller is a key part of the experience, and sometimes you just can't replicate the controller using modern USB devices, like with that Pong thing. Like you need now. I mean, there. I think for NES, there's decent, you know, controllers that replicate it.
Yeah.
Um,
8-bit do a
yeah,
8-bit do a
yeah,
fantastic job of
yeah,
emulating the old feel of the
yeah.
controller.
8-bit do has a lot of good controllers. They have a lot of good like NES and SNES style controllers,
Hmm.
but certain things, and again, I just wax. But my favorite part, which I didn't take pictures of, which was in the dark, was the arcade machine area
Mm.
where I got to play Centipede on a real Centipede machine with the trackball, and
Yes.
you just can't play that game the same without that trackball, and you just can't play like Tempest the same or Asteroids the same way or Pong the same way without a dial. So,
Yep.
um, it the controller I guess is part of the experience. So just like Mike was kind of showing us before with the Cyberdeck, like the hardware, the touch and the look and feel is part of the experience. Like you could use a Raspberry Pi desktop on with modern equipment and get the
Hmm.
same output that he's getting on his Cyberdeck, but putting it into the form factor, it makes all the difference. So,
Mm.
you know,
But also
so,
looking at Cyberdecks and all the retro machines, it's the joy of that era of computing. Right now, I mean, admittedly, I've got a big light up PC here with RGB everywhere. But back then, it was a case of all the machines were different. They had different styles. They were futuristic. They had silvers, they had accents, they had sharp angles, and they all lent into the Cyberdeck aesthetic of that era.
Good chunky keyboards as well.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, apart from Commodore's machines, which were all bread bins, really. And I say that with love because I own two of them.
yeah. So I mean, there's like there's just something about the original stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of original stuff, Les, I know you have something that you're working on for review that sounds like it's going to be really interesting.
It is interesting. So we've had in the past a lot of Cadis boards. So the Cadis Vim 4 being the first one we reviewed. Here it is, about 18 months ago now. Immensely powerful little SBC. This really it blows a Pi 4 out the water, but you're paying 2 to 3 times the price of a Pi 4, even an 8 gig model. We had the Edge 2 Pro again, which was another powerful machine that had 16 gig of DDR4 RAM. But here's something else that's come out. So it's been out a while. This is a Cadis Vim 1S. Let's get it in shot with that YouTuber trick. There we go. And that's my USB keyboard and mouse. You don't need that. It's about the size of a Pi 4, Pi 3, but it's got different form factors. You'll see USB ports. Get in shot. There you go. 2 USB 2 ports, 1 USB-C port. That's no data at all. It's just power, 5 volts. HDMI capable of 4K. Let's get finger on the right one. There it is. And Ethernet. Now, the Ethernet only goes up to 100 meg, so it's not gigabit. This is made to a price point. This is about $65. 2 gig of RAM, 4-core CPU going at 2 gigahertz, and it's got a GPIO. So I'm currently in the middle of reviewing this, come out at the end of the week, to see how it stacks against a Pi 4, but also to its older family members like the Vim 4. So a little bit of a spoiler, you're only paying $64 for this. This is $200 and something, so you're not going to get that performance. But so far, it's been a good board. It runs Ubuntu, it runs Android as well. It's been a good board for general Linux computing. For GPIO stuff, I still need to work on that. There's a little bit of a trick to get it to work, and I won't reveal that just yet, but a little bit of a trick to get it to work. But what's good on these boards is you don't need to worry about SD cards because it's got eMMC. You also don't need to worry about where do I get my software from? You don't need to go to the Raspberry Pi website and download an image from there or use Raspberry Pi Imager. When you boot it up, let's get the fingers right, here we go. You press the reset button and the F button, function button, let go of reset, and then it comes on the screen to say, ooh, wow, which is some software like a BIOS, that when you boot the machine, it comes up to say, what do you want to do? You connect it to the internet via Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and it will download a software image of Ubuntu, Android, whatever you want from a list, and it's all pre-done for that board. So you haven't got to worry about configuring it at all. Download, copies it to RAM, flash it to eMMC, first boot, do the updates, and away you go. It takes about 15 minutes. Really easy. So this board isn't unique to this board. The Vim 4 had it as well. It's been a thing that's gone through all the boards. But I'm interested to play around with this to see what it can do, because it's quite a powerful board on paper for $65. But we'll see how it goes in review.
Awesome.
It sounds like he's got Raspberry Pi noobs on it inside the BIOS. That's really clever.
Yeah, and if you've seen Raspberry Pi, they've changed the firmware in the last 6 to 8 months, I believe, where now you can have like a network boot almost in the firmware. So it's sort of like a version of that on steroids, for want of a better phrase.
Yep, that is really cool. So we're almost out of time, but I wanted to highlight a question from a reader from a viewer that I actually think is kind of interesting. So McLeod asks, any secondhand Raspberry Pi Pico Ws or Pis? Is there an I guess the broader question is there an organization that donates or collects donations of Raspberry Pis or Picos that we know of?
There isn't an organization that I know of. No, I'm UK centric, so I can only say for UK. There was something that was hinted about a few years ago, but it hasn't happened. I think COVID put the nail in the coffin for that one, unfortunately. I think it's more down to local groups having surplus of stock and sort of donating it out here and there.
Right. So I guess it kind of depends on where you are, McLeod. But if you want to send me an email, I can look into. I'm curious to look into it, and maybe I can even put up something on social or whatever for folks who want to donate. I will say that it's a lot easier to probably get a Pico than to get a Pi. I mean, the stock is improving on Pi, but they're still very expensive and sought after, whereas Picos and Pico Ws are much easier to come by, less expensive. People probably have more of them sitting around. Probably easier to get a sponsor who would want to send a bunch. And if you're dealing with I wouldn't even say a large class or a medium size, more than like 3 kids, then you probably a Pico is a more practical in terms of just being able to get something at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That is, of course, assuming that you have other computers to connect the Picos to. If you don't, then I think obviously having a Pi is good, because then you would start from you'd have a fully bootable system, provided that you had a keyboard and a monitor, and maybe a mouse for it. So, I guess.
Talking of Pi stocks, though, they are improving again. I updated the Raspberry Pi restock story today. You can now go to the Pi Hut in the UK and you can buy up to 50 Raspberry Pi 4s in one purchase. That is about £2,000, so it's way out of my pay grade, but you can do that if you want.
Yep.
The stock is there now, it's getting there. Even 02Ws are slowly coming into stock.
Right.
I mean, they were always a bit slow anyway, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it came out in 2021 and it was sort of unobtainium until 3 or 4 months ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, yep. standard Picos are also produced in Kenya, and indeed the price is much more affordable. Yeah, I mean it is definitely much more affordable, but you would also need to make sure that you have a a computer to attach them to, because otherwise you can't do the code. So there's
Yeah.
that. But I think if I was trying to teach, all things being equal, if I was trying to teach coding to kids for the first time, I think I'd go with a Pico at this point, because
Definitely.
it's just easier to get into physical computing with them, and you kind of put the Linux stuff that you do, the operating system, kind of on the side. If you could hook it up to a regular, you know, an old PC or an old or Linux, running Windows or Linux, MacBook even, just anything with USB port, and then you can easily run Python scripts, run MicroPython scripts on it. I would get everybody a breadboard, a Pico, some lights, some some resistors, and you know, and you could get started, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah.
I have thought myself about whether I could do a little class like that at the local library or something. So anyway, thank you everybody for watching and listening. As always, we are here on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. UK time, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.